Motion in your step.
Motivation in your heart.
Hello, and welcome to today's Motion and Motivation podcast.
We've put together a study guide for everyone. If you need it, you can grab it from the video description.
Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're going to be looking at vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
And specifically, the ideas in Brené Brown's book, Daring Greatly.
Mm-hmm.
So this one should be really interesting.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that comes up all the time in kind of popular psychology
For sure.
and self-help.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious to see what like the research side of it is.
Right. Yeah, Brown is a researcher first and foremost. So
Okay. This is going to be good.
So we'll see what kind of insights she has.
Yeah, and she has a lot of personal anecdotes too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And which really helps drive the points home, I think.
And I think we'll see a lot of that as we go through this book.
Definitely.
So how about we jump right in?
Let's do it.
Kind of one of the first things you have to do with a topic like this is define it.
Right.
So how does she define vulnerability?
So she describes it as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure.
And that's something that I think a lot of us shy away from.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And
It's almost like the opposite of how we're raised.
yes.
To like,
We're told to be tough.
be tough. And
Don't show your emotions.
yeah, don't let people see you sweat kind of thing.
Right, exactly.
But she's saying that's not the case.
It's not the case. And what she says is it's actually the key to experiencing all the good stuff.
Okay.
So all those like deep emotions, love, joy, belonging, creativity, courage, empathy,
Wow.
all of it comes from being vulnerable.
So it's almost like the foundation then.
It is the foundation
works really
to
good.
experiencing the good stuff in life.
Yeah, to having a meaningful life,
Absolutely.
you have to have vulnerability.
You have to allow yourself to be vulnerable.
Huh.
And one of the things she talks about is how she actually feels her most vulnerable when she's experiencing joy.
Really?
Yeah, especially when it comes to her children.
Huh.
You would think joy would be the opposite
I would think that, yeah.
of vulnerability. It's like a good thing.
Right.
So why would you?
But it's because you have so much to lose. And so you're putting yourself out there when you allow yourself to feel that joy.
Interesting. Okay.
And then another myth that she debunks is this idea of, I don't do vulnerability.
yeah.
Have you ever heard that?
Oh, yeah. I've definitely heard people say that.
Right.
Like they're too cool
Yeah.
to be vulnerable.
As if it's a choice.
Right.
But it's not a choice. We are all vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's part of the human experience.
Yeah. It's just part of being human.
Right. And so she says that trying to avoid vulnerability actually leads to a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms
Okay.
and disconnection from ourselves and others.
So really we're doing ourselves a disservice
Absolutely.
by trying to avoid being vulnerable.
Yes.
Interesting.
And there's another emotion that is really tied to this, and that's shame.
Shame.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big one.
It's a big one.
And I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about with that.
Yeah. So shame is universal.
It's that feeling of
Not being good enough.
not being worthy
Yeah.
or lovable.
Yep.
And she says that shame is actually the fear of disconnection.
Okay.
So it's that worry that we're not worthy of love and belonging.
Yeah.
And we all have that fear.
So we all have that fear, so then we're all vulnerable to shame then.
Yes, we are all vulnerable to shame. And she talks about 3 main responses to shame.
Okay, what are those?
So she calls them moving away, moving toward, and moving against.
Okay.
So imagine that someone gives you some feedback that triggers a feeling of shame.
All right. I'm imagining that.
Okay, so moving away would be withdrawing, shutting down,
Okay.
or trying to hide the part of you that feels exposed.
Basically just avoiding it.
Avoiding it completely.
All right, yeah.
Moving toward might look like people-pleasing,
Okay.
trying to overcompensate or seeking approval to kind of soothe that shame.
Look, you're trying to get back in someone's good graces.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then moving against can look like getting angry, blaming others, or trying to control the situation to feel less vulnerable.
Oh, so that's like lashing out.
It is.
Okay. So are these
Yeah, no.
these are all like defense mechanisms then?
They're all defense mechanisms against shame.
Oh.
And she even shares a story about how she accidentally hit reply all on an email
Oh no.
and had a full-blown shame attack.
Really? Even Brené Brown?
Even Brené Brown, who studies shame for a living,
Wow.
is not immune to it.
Okay, so what does she do when that happens?
So she has this mantra she uses. She just says to herself, pain, pain, pain.
Okay.
just to acknowledge the feeling.
So she doesn't try to avoid it.
No.
She just acknowledges that it's there.
She acknowledges it and she lets it pass.
Okay, and that's part of what she calls shame resilience.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so shame resilience is
It's
basically...
the ability to recognize shame,
Okay.
understand its triggers, and have healthy coping mechanisms for dealing with it.
So it's not about like never feeling shame.
No.
It's about being able to
It's about having the tools to move through it.
move through it.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
And now when we think about those ways that we try to protect ourselves from shame and vulnerability,
Yeah.
she introduces this concept of the vulnerability armory.
Okay, vulnerability armory.
I like that term.
Yeah, I like that too. What is that?
So imagine like a knight getting suited up for battle.
Right.
But instead of fighting an enemy, we're fighting those feelings of shame and vulnerability.
Okay.
And we all have different armor that we use.
Okay, so what are some of those weapons in that vulnerability armory?
One of the most common ones is something she calls foreboding joy.
Foreboding joy. What is that?
Have you ever felt that like dread that can creep in when you're experiencing something really joyful?
Yeah, like you're afraid to be too happy
Yes, exactly.
because something bad might happen.
Exactly.
Wow, I never thought of it as like a
A defense mechanism.
defense mechanism, yeah.
But it is.
But I guess it makes sense.
It does.
If you don't let yourself get too happy,
Right.
then you can't be as disappointed when something bad happens.
And she even shares a story about experiencing this when her kids were making her laugh in the car.
Oh, wow.
So this is something that we all do.
Yeah. Okay, so what are some other pieces of armor?
Another big one is perfectionism.
Perfectionism. Okay.
Especially in our culture today,
Yeah.
where there's so much pressure to be perfect.
So much pressure, yeah.
But Brown argues that perfectionism isn't actually about striving for excellence.
What is it about then?
It's a defense mechanism.
Okay.
It's driven by the fear of shame and judgment.
Okay.
It's a way of trying to earn love and acceptance by being flawless.
But doesn't that just lead to more shame when you can't be perfect?
It absolutely does.
Okay.
Because none of us can be perfect.
Right.
And so it just becomes this cycle of never feeling good enough.
Okay, so perfectionism
It's a trap.
It's a trap.
Gotcha. Okay, what else?
And the third piece of our that she talks about is numbing.
Numbing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is basically finding ways to avoid uncomfortable emotions altogether. Oh, yeah. Okay, I've definitely done that
I think we all have.
in my life for sure.
Whether it's through work or social media or
And even just like, TV
yeah.
or like,
Anything to distract ourselves.
exactly, just to avoid those feelings.
Right. And she says that numbing might give us temporary relief,
Yeah.
but it prevents us from fully experiencing life.
Because you're not
Of cutting yourself off
experiencing all of it.
from the full range of human emotions.
Right.
Both the good and the bad.
Okay, so these are
By
all...
understanding this vulnerability armory,
Yeah,
we can start to recognize these things
Yes.
in our own lives.
exactly.
And then maybe
And that's the first step.
work to dismantle them.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so that's where her daring greatly strategies come in then.
That is exactly where they come in.
Okay, great.
And we can talk more about those next
Awesome.
time.
I'm excited to hear about them.
Yeah, me too. So these daring greatly strategies,
Yeah.
these are all about...
Learning to recognize when we're reaching for that armor
Yeah.
and choosing a different path.
Okay.
So one of the most powerful tools she offers is the practice of gratitude.
Gratitude.
Yeah.
Okay, so like being thankful for the good things you have in your life.
Exactly.
How does that tie into vulnerability?
Well, when we're consumed by fear and anxiety,
Okay.
it's hard to see the good.
Yeah.
So by intentionally practicing gratitude,
Mm-hmm.
we're shifting our perspective.
Okay.
We're starting to notice all the good things that are already present.
And that helps you kind of disarm that foreboding joy.
Exactly. It's like saying, yes, I'm opening myself up to potential hurt,
Right.
but I'm also choosing to savor the good.
The good that's here now.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then when we do get hurt or make mistakes and shame comes up,
Yeah.
that's where self-compassion comes in.
Self-compassion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding
Okay.
that we would offer a close friend.
Yeah. That's hard, though,
It is hard.
to be kind to yourself.
It is.
Especially when you feel like you messed up.
Yes, but we are all imperfect human beings.
Yeah.
And we all make mistakes.
That's true.
So instead of beating ourselves up,
Right?
we can offer ourselves words of comfort and encouragement.
Mhm.
And that self-compassion is what helps to disarm that perfectionism.
Because if you can accept yourself,
Yeah.
then you don't have to strive for perfection.
Exactly.
Right.
Because you already have worth,
Right.
regardless of your flaws.
Okay, I like that.
And then she also talks about the importance of setting boundaries.
Oh, boundaries.
Yeah,
Okay, that's a tough one too.
it is a tough one.
But how does that relate to vulnerability?
So boundaries are all about protecting our time,
Mm-hmm.
energy,
Okay.
emotional well-being.
Right.
So when we have healthy boundaries in place,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we're less likely to overextend ourselves.
Yeah, you can't give what you don't have.
Exactly.
You have to take care of yourself
Yes.
first.
And she says that boundaries are actually a sign of self-respect
Oh.
because you're saying that your needs and your well-being are important.
And it's okay to prioritize those.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we've got gratitude, we've got self-compassion, we've got setting boundaries.
Those are 3 big ones.
Are those like the main ones?
Those are some of the main ones.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So now, and then
You know, we talked about this idea of the disengagement divide.
the disengagement divide,
Right.
that gap between our values
Yes.
and our actions.
Right.
How does that play out?
It shows up everywhere, but one of the most common areas is in parenting.
Okay.
So, for example, we might tell our kids that honesty is important,
Right.
but then we lie about their age to get a discount at the movies.
Oh, yeah. I've totally done that.
I think we all have.
Okay. What else?
Or we might preach the importance of kindness and respect, but then we lose our temper with them when they're driving us crazy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And Brown points out that those inconsistencies can be really confusing for kids. Yeah, I bet.
Because they're learning about the world through our actions more than our words.
So we got to walk the walk.
We have to walk the walk.
Yeah.
And that's where minding the gap comes in.
Minding the gap.
Yeah,
Okay.
being aware of those inconsistencies
Okay.
and then making a conscious effort to align our actions with our values.
Striving for integrity.
Yes,
Okay.
and authenticity,
Even when it's hard.
even when it's hard.
Okay, so she also talks about
And she says that wholehearted parenting,
wholehearted parenting.
yeah,
Okay.
which is what this is all about,
Mhm.
can have a profound impact on our children's well-being.
So we're not just teaching them.
Right.
We're modeling
We are modeling for them.
a way to be.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And she also talks about this idea of allowing our children to struggle,
Oh, yeah.
which can be really hard.
It is hard. We want to protect them
We do.
for everything.
But she says that allowing them to experience adversity
Yeah.
is actually essential for their growth. So it's like that saying, smooth seas don't make skillful sailors,
I like that.
right?
Okay.
And she shares this really powerful story about her daughter, Ellen,
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
who was terrified to swim a race,
Yes.
and she let her do it.
She did, and it would have been so easy to just let her skip it,
Right.
but she didn't.
So Ellen was able to.
Ellen swam the race,
Mm.
and she learned that she was stronger than she thought,
Yeah.
and it gave her this huge sense of accomplishment.
Okay. So sometimes the best thing we can do is let them
Is let them struggle
struggle. Yeah.
and know that we're there to support them.
Okay.
And she ties this idea of supporting our children through challenges to the concept of hope.
Okay.
So hope is a really powerful emotion,
Mm.
but Brown doesn't see it as just an emotion.
What is it then?
She describes it as this cognitive process
Okay.
that involves setting realistic goals,
Okay.
identifying pathways to achieve those goals,
Mm-hmm.
and believing in our ability to do so.
So it's not just wishing. It's not just wishing.
It's about having a plan.
It is.
Okay.
So as parents, we can nurture hope in our children
Okay.
by encouraging them to set goals,
Yeah.
problem solve,
Mm-hmm.
and believe in themselves.
That's also by modeling those things ourselves.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Now, she also talks about how these ideas can be applied to our workplaces and schools.
Okay, so not just in parenting,
Not just in parenting.
but like in the real world.
Yes, in all areas of our life.
Okay, cool. How, so
So she uses the term disruptive engagement.
disruptive engagement,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
It sounds kind of contradictory.
It does, yeah.
But the idea is that we need to disrupt the status quo,
Okay.
challenge the traditional ways of doing things,
Mhm.
to create cultures that are more compassionate,
Oh, wow.
connected,
Mhm.
and ultimately more productive.
So how do you disrupt things in a positive way?
Well, she suggests starting by addressing shame.
Shame.
Yeah, because shame is a major obstacle
Okay.
to innovation and creativity because it makes people afraid to take risks or share their ideas.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right. So creating a shame-resilient culture
Okay.
is essential for fostering disruptive engagement.
So that means creating a culture where
Yes.
people feel safe
Exactly.
to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Okay.
And to make mistakes.
Gotcha.
And that's where leadership plays a crucial role.
Okay.
Leaders need to model vulnerability,
Okay.
be willing to admit their own mistakes.
They lead by example.
Yes, lead by example.
Okay, cool.
And she gives some great examples of leaders who have done this successfully.
Oh, like who?
She talks about Christine Day, the CEO of Lululemon,
Okay.
who shifted her leadership style from being right to creating space for others to perform.
And that worked.
It did. It had a really positive impact on the company.
So being vulnerable
Yes,
can actually make you a better leader.
absolutely.
Interesting.
And then she also talks about the importance of feedback.
Feedback. Okay.
And she says that feedback needs to promote growth and learning rather than criticism and judgment.
So how do you do that?
So she suggests focusing on strength.
So nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And using what's called the strengths perspective
Okay.
when giving feedback.
What's that?
So it's about recognizing and acknowledging what someone does well,
Mm-hmm.
and then offering suggestions
So-
for how they can use those strengths to address areas for growth.
So you're not just pointing out what they did wrong.
Exactly.
You're helping them get better.
You're helping them see how they can improve.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So this is all about fostering a growth mindset.
Growth mindset.
Right.
Well,
where people believe that they can learn and improve.
Right. Instead of feeling like a failure.
Exactly.
Okay, so this disruptive engagement
Yeah,
is really about changing how we think,
it is.
about work and school.
And life in general.
Yeah, okay.
So it's moving away from fear and scarcity
Yeah.
and towards vulnerability,
Right.
connection,
Okay.
and wholeheartedness.
I like that. It's amazing how much we've uncovered just from this one book.
I know, right? It's really thought-provoking.
Yeah, and it makes you realize, like, how much of this stuff we just kind of take for granted.
Yeah, we do.
You know, like, we don't really think about it.
We'll just kind of go through life.
Yeah, and then someone like Brene Brown comes along.
She's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let's look at this a little closer.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I never thought about it that way before.
Right.
So before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I think it'd be good to kind of like recap
Okay.
some of the key takeaways.
Now let's do that.
So first and foremost,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about how vulnerability is often misunderstood
Yes.
and even feared.
Yes, and that fear stems from this idea that vulnerability equals weakness.
Right.
But what Brown shows is that vulnerability is actually the birthplace of courage,
Yeah.
connection,
Mhm.
creativity.
It's about being your authentic self,
Exactly.
even when it's scary.
Yes, and that allows us to connect with others
Right.
on a deeper level.
And experience life more fully.
Yes,
We also talked about shame,
we did.
that feeling of not being good enough,
Right.
and how we can develop shame resilience
Resilience, yeah.
by recognizing our triggers,
Mm-hmm.
practicing self-compassion,
Yes.
and choosing healthier responses.
Instead of reaching for that armor.
Right. We all have that armor,
We do.
but we can choose not to wear it.
We can.
And then we talked about those daring greatly strategies,
Yeah.
like gratitude,
Gratitude.
self-compassion,
Self-compassion.
setting boundaries,
Right.
giving and receiving feedback in a healthy way.
Yes.
So those are all tools
Tools for daring greatly.
that we can use to embrace vulnerability
Absolutely.
and live more wholeheartedly.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
I want to leave you with a question.
Okay.
What is one small act of courage that you can take today to embrace vulnerability in your own life?
I like that.
Could be anything,
It could be anything.
from telling someone you love them
Yeah.
to trying something new
Mm-hmm.
that scares you a little bit,
To just letting yourself feel your emotions
Yeah.
without judgment.
to just take a small step
One small step.
outside your comfort zone
Yeah.
and trust that you've got this.
Trust yourself.
Thanks for joining us
Yes, thank you.
for this deep dive into daring greatly.
Hope you enjoyed it.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. That way you won't miss any of our updates. Also, if you think this video could help others, please share it with them. Thanks for watching and for your support.